everyone, welcome to Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey, and today we're going to be talking about The Legend of Vox Machina with my old bandmate from 87 years ago, Mike Newcomb.
87.
Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here, or Mikey, as you've been in my brain permanently since forever.
The differential helps,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
especially with our age group, we were one of probably 7 in our classrooms, so that was
Yeah. One out of every 7 guys is named
yeah.
Mike.
Especially the Irish ones, yeah.
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
especially.
So, we are going to be diving into The Legend of Vox Machina. I want to start out with because this came up sort of organically, I think, when I drew a picture of a character from Critical Role and just posted it to Instagram, and you commented on it. I think that was how we figured out we were both into it. So what is your history with not just Vox Machina stuff, but just Critical Role in general?
Well, I started getting into Critical Role a couple of years ago, watching it on Twitch. I actually started with Campaign 2, and every now and have a random assemblage of knowledge of Campaign 1, which this show heavily focuses on. But Campaign 2 was kind of my jam, and it was really critical shortly after in 2020 when my son was born. I'm up in the middle of the night, and I don't really get to sleep, and I need something kind of engaging that I just can listen to with my ears, not be able to like watch or use my hands for. So those podcast episodes were critical in helping me kind of stay awake and engaged.
That's already 3.
stay engaged at that time of night. And I absolutely just fell in love with it, and I have actually met Laura and Travis years ago in 2009 at an old job. I was doing on-camera interviews for like a Japanese art gallery, and we were at New York Anime Festival, and obviously they have a huge history with anime. And so I met both of them years ago. And so seeing them again this time later in this like massive kind of cultural phenomenon that is Critical Role was pretty surreal. And so that's kind of the history that I've had with the show. And also I've just played D&D on and off for years. And so it's great to kind of see something like this also be part of the cultural zeitgeist. I think is a big part of why it is that case.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it was always there, but 2015 there's a trajectory that pretty much follows that show going on the air at Geek and Sundry. That's so I know some folks at Geek and Sundry and at Nerdist that it was both I was a fan of stuff, but also I internet friends with some of these folks. But I just happened to be watching their Twitch stream at Geek and Sundry, and they happened to say, hey, we're going to have some folks come in and play some Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, cool. All right, I'm in. And then they were like, and it's a bunch of voice actors. And I was like, okay, cool. Extra bonus. I'm in. And then I just started watching it. And then it just because of work schedule, I wasn't able to watch it live, which I think is a lot of folks probably that work in the service industry like me. But what happened was I actually went down after moving back out of the city into the suburbs and stuff, and working off and on at different places out here. I went down to Virginia to help out at the place that my brother worked at or opened as a co-founder, and I went down and just helped out for a couple months. And I was either working or at his house. So in the downtime of when I wasn't working, I was watching the episodes that I had missed. So I was like just pouring through them quick. And then get to Campaign 2. I tried to watch it at first, but I became too attached to the Vox Machina, and I had to put it off. So then once they reached, it's very weird. Like
I only say that because I'm like, I feel that way about Campaign 2, and now with Campaign 3, I'm just kind of like, oh, but I already kind of miss a lot of those characters they created. So I know what you mean, actually.
By the time they reach Campaign 4, you will feel like I do, I think, where like I already went through it. So like you'll know what you're in for with that feeling,
right?
And you'll just be like, it's no big deal anymore. But yeah, so that's what happened with Campaign 2, and then I had to. I was like, okay, now I'm ready after maybe like 25 to 30 episodes in, and so I was
Mm-hmm.
starting to catch up, and then I watched it as close to live as possible. I would at least watch the episode that week. And
Yeah.
this new campaign, I've watched every episode as it happens, which has
Mm-hmm.
been cool, but that's also a side effect of not having a job right now. So, but yeah, the cool thing, like you said, you had met a couple of them. I actually was on the dance floor with basically the whole cast at San Diego Comic-Con one year because
Oh.
I had been to the parties that like Nerdist would put on and stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
was able to get into for a few years, and they were all there. So
That's
it was,
amazing.
yeah, it was a good time. Didn't we never talked to each other, but it was like we were all just literally piled on because it was the most like the parties were fun, but it was like the most atrociously over the top. Like if you picture a dance club, it was that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was like I at any moment a foam party could have broke out. It was very strange. But like luckily they had good DJs that would just play like the Pokemon theme song, and it was fine.
There you go. There you
Um,
go.
but yeah, so that's we have not incredibly dissimilar, but not exactly similar histories with it. So
Yeah.
taking what you knew of the show,
Mm-hmm.
of the tabletop show,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, how much of that did you have? Because you said you weren't as familiar with the first campaign.
Yeah,
How
beyond like
familiar?
big story beats and character names and
Okay,
kind of classes and whatnot. And so, I mean, first it was just kind of interesting to see these actors that I've watched in campaign two mostly, just kind of bringing these characters from campaign one to life in the animated series.
mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so surreal, because in a lot of ways, and maybe for better or worse, in a lot of ways with the animated series too, it's almost difficult to separate the actor from the character because you can
Right.
almost like see them reading the
You
lines
you
in your head.
picture the person as the character.
Yeah, in a
And
big way, and
what
for
doesn't
better or worse, right?
what
Like
doesn't help that too is the fact that an intro they had in the first campaign for a long time was literally them dressed up as the characters.
as the
So
characters, yeah, yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
And it was cool to also see that translated into this kind of adult animated series in the way that you're starting to see a trend on, I know that there were shows prior to Invincible that came out, but that was one that I watched obviously too, and started to see him like, oh, you can go hard in the paint with like violence in animated series like this.
and I think
Um,
a big part of that is Amazon just being
yeah,
like, yeah, we're gonna go for it because like Netflix will
yeah,
do it, but a lot of the time it's either straight up anime or it's comedy.
yeah,
Uh,
right.
and then HBO Max, you have Harley Quinn, but like
Hmm.
that's about it, I think, for like adult oriented stuff. But like what I love about this too is like the character designer that they have on this is the guy from Young Justice, which is just
Yeah,
a
right.
phenomenal show too.
Hmm.
So yeah, I there's a lot about this show that I adored. So let's move into it then. Let's just go right into the actual show now. What did you think about this show as a whole?
I mean, I really enjoyed the show a great deal. What a time to be alive if you're into genre television, right? I mean, with shows like this, if you could have told me when I was a kid that this show would exist, I would have, it would have blown my mind. Because I think the thing that this show really stands out to me in what it did so well is that it actually captures, even though it's a lot of winks and nods and inside jokes, but it captures the dynamics of a D&D party so well as like a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I just you have the person that role plays super serious, you have the person that's just kind of aloof, you have the person that's super crass and saying lascivious things constantly, and like all of those people might be at your D&D table, and they were all on this show in different ways. And so I think that to me was just kind of the way that you see all those interpersonal interactions between people playing D&D, like were actually brought to life in like this narrative of like Vox Machina. And that was actually like my favorite part of the show, and oftentimes something that I watched some of the episodes with my wife, and she was just like, she has no connection to this
Right.
material really. She's watched some episodes of Campaign 2 with me. She loves like the voice actors and what they bring to it, but she just like necessarily didn't have that kind of experience with D&D, and so she's like, why is this tonally all over the place? And I was like, it's because I guess that's kind of how D&D can be, but like
Because
it made an excellent
every
point.
party is filled with a bunch of fuck ups. That's
Yeah,
what.
there's always somebody kind of like Sam. There's always somebody kind of like Travis Williams, Grog, you know, and then there's people that like maybe take it seriously like me, and I always kind of played it more like, you know, like Marisha Ray's Keyleth, I kind of played her character, you know, like kind of insecure and kind of serious about it. So it was kind of funny just to see all that stuff kind of brought to life, you know, but that as a whole, I think that was kind of like the thing that stood out to me as like being the best part about the show is just how well it exemplified like an actual D&D experience.
Yeah, and I think another thing about that like kind of hammers that home is the fact that like I think with campaign 2 the cast felt a little bit more free to like create more exaggerated characters because they had been doing this thing for years at that point.
Hmm.
And in campaign 1, especially since they started out as a lark for Liam's birthday one
Yeah,
time, that it wasn't supposed to be a full campaign.
right.
They kind of built archetypes, so it lends itself to the person watching being able to associate more.
Yeah,
Um, because you're not just watching a show about other characters, you're watching a show about characters that like you've known in every story. And like
yeah,
they have
yeah.
their specifics for, you know, their still their own characters, but like a hero character, like an altruistic
Hmm.
character, a
Yeah.
naive character, like you will always have that kind of thing at the table. So yeah, it comes through really strong in the show, and obviously a big part of that is the fact that they were able to build this show themselves. So
Hmm.
they, you know, the whole process of them going out to different studios to try to get this made, and then nobody picked it up, so they went to Kickstarter, and then the
Yeah.
world exploded.
World said we'll do it.
Yeah, that was bonkers to watch that
That was
actually.
bonkers. Yeah.
But yeah, so I am so thrilled at how this show came out. Like it is to have this show and the last episode of this podcast that just came out last week was about Peacemaker.
Yeah.
To have those two shows come out at basically the same time, like both of their finales aired on the within the same 24 hours. Um,
Hmm.
and I that's to have those things at the same time. Like I don't remember the last time I was that excited about TV. Like
Yeah.
in
Right.
since Lost, probably. Like it's
Yeah.
absolutely bonkers. But like, yeah, I the fact that they were able to maintain the quality on this, the fact that they were able, like, it's distilled. It is a
Hmm.
very sort of I don't want to say linear, but like
Hmm.
it's taking a very macro idea and like bringing it down to a very focused version of that. And
Yeah.
they did it in a really good way that is an introduction with a huge tease of what's to come in season 2. Like it is
Hmm.
I just kind of can't believe they managed to do it. But
Yeah.
what are some of your, outside of the sort of um the bigger sort of concept things that you found to be some of your favorite stuff, what are some of like the
Hmm.
specific things that happened in the show that you sort of like made you sit back a little bit?
Oh, well, you know, I think for me, uh, other than kind of catching on like the random guest voices that you hear throughout the show, you know, like David, anytime I hear David Tennant's voice after watching Doctor Who back when he was on it, you know, I'm always super excited to hear him, and it's kind of an unmistakable voice too.
Yep.
So I always loved kind of hearing kind of the guest stars appear. Um,
Him and Dominic Monaghan both like in this show
yeah,
were just
yeah.
so fun to have.
And then like there was a scene where it was like another voice. I'm like, there's no way that's just some English guy. That's probably someone. And it was the Hound from Game of Thrones, Rory McCain.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, of course he was in this too. Like, why not just get, you know, that guy too? So that there was a lot of moments like that where I was constantly trying to look up, oh, who is playing the voice of this person? Because I'm sure it's somebody I'll recognize. And that's kind of a testament too to like how endeared this show probably was to a lot of people, where I'm sure that they would approach some of these folks and give them the premise if they were already familiar, and they're like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool, or
Yeah,
sounds
I
fun.
mean, I'll get in the booth for a little bit. It's fine.
Yeah. But I think it was the show really kind of caught me off guard with like because I tried to also take it to a point where you have a lot of familiarity with campaign one characters. I don't necessarily have that same familiarity. And like I said, I watched some episodes with my wife as well. And one of the things that surprised both of us, I read the graphic novel that kind of acts as an introduction to the story and
Hmm.
to this show in a lot of ways too. So like the kind of like classic like formulation of the team, we're getting a gang together kind of story already happens in the graphic novel.
Yeah,
And part of me almost assumed that that would actually happen on the show too. Like this is going to be a story of the origins of Vox Machina. And from like moment one, they're like, nope, foot on floor, like hit the gas, like we're just going to go at full
yeah,
speed. And we really hope you can come along with us the whole time because we're not going to set too much up about like the rules of this fantasy universe that we've built.
because also
And
they legally can't say some of the
yeah, they
things.
legally can't. And so it was just kind of, I was like, kind of really like, okay, like I really had to be like engaged with that first episode because of how much they really try to catch you up on so quickly. And, I really appreciated like as the seasons got on, they really focused in on Percy's storyline as the
Yeah,
kind of main focus of everything. And that was also like a really interesting choice, where not every character got these like really deep character arcs as a result, and maybe there's in another season they will, but it's almost just like my attachment to actually more even the actors than the characters. I was like, come
yeah.
on, where's Laura Bailey's like cool like turn like hero turn moment or something other than just like the cool set pieces. But I think like the thing that I could talk a lot about that was my favorite was actually like Keela's character arc through the whole
100%.
season. Yeah, that was
100%.
that was like my favorite thing in the show was
I
watching this
think,
character do that, go through that whole arc like that.
yeah, I think they made a concerted effort to put Keyleth uh, not at the forefront, but like to
Hmm.
really hammer home how important she is to that group. Because, and you made, I don't know your knowledge on this, but like especially in campaign one, the internet
I've
really
heard.
enjoyed dragging her.
Yeah,
And
sucks.
it really sucks
Yeah,
because Marisha as a person is so important to the whole
yeah.
establishment of Critical Role.
She's the CD. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like,
Hmm.
and it was really nice to see when they released for campaign 3 the sort of like we're building the set
Hmm.
video, because it really did show how much the cast surrounding her is on her side, because it
Yeah, yeah.
when you're watching it live and through, but like especially in campaign 1, and you're watching Twitter like react to the episodes, and like
Hmm.
if she did something that was like goofy but detrimental, like the internet would just shut down. It would just become like the worst place in the world.
Yeah.
And so to see them sort of push her forward and show how much growth she has in this one season, it felt rewarding, not just for the character but for the person behind it. And like that's
Yeah.
sort of the thing with this whole company, is that it's the connection of, I mean, you're a streamer, the connection
Yeah.
of the people watching you is why you're there. So like
Yeah.
when there's that whole backlash aspect of it, it's so good to see it come forward and basically have them be like, you know what, this is why she rules. Like just
Yeah.
that it's very clear that they're just like, this is why she's awesome. Just get with it or don't.
And I also liked how I think with a lot of the other actors, like I said, it was hard for me to not immediately picture, the person performing the
Yeah.
character. But like Marisha Ray's performance, was really easy to get lost in. Oh, right, that's Marisha Ray. Like she did such a good job with that whole character performing it, and I think the writing was really good for her. I think that also she had probably, you know, a lot, like you kind of already brought up how these characters were very archetypal in their own way, and that's not that say that Keyleth isn't, but like these kind of thematic qualities to her story arc of kind of insecurity and like dealing with the weight of expectations of other people and
She's the
like
one
maybe
with
your
the
life
true hero's
history.
journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that is like so much easier to kind of grok than the kind of insane red wedding-esque event that happens to Percy, you know, that turns him into the person that he is of like survivor's guilt and grief and
Yeah.
abuse victim. Versus like Keyleth just like has this kind of more, I feel like, accessible human story to her character arc, and I really loved that about like her character, and I thought like, you know, the writing really served her really well. And so she just was like my absolute favorite performance, like in my favorite story the whole season. And she got to
Yeah.
have some really rad, like
She had
I'm
the
gonna
she
save
had
the
the
day
biggest
moments.
win moments. Yeah. She
Yeah.
definitely had the best. I mean, there like everybody got some, but like
Mhm.
there were so many for her that were just so much better. And like
Yeah.
they almost set up some that were like it seems like they're going this way, but they just hold back and don't actually do it and let somebody else do it. I'm like, oh man, I'm glad somebody else is doing something, but like that would have been cool too if they let her do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, yeah, I'm thrilled with that, but
Hmm.
also just the fact that like the only like the level of quality on this show, granted it's because they got $11 million from crowdsourcing to be able to afford to do it, but like the only thing that is sort of like underwhelming to me is the fact that they did go with the CG model stuff for, like dragons and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is noticeable, but like it is what it is. It saves a little bit of effort, so I can't blame them too hard on it. But like the
Hmm.
fact that that's basically like my one small issue, like,
Yeah.
is just astounding to me because like the fact that they're able to in media res, like you were saying, like they the team is already get together, the story is already moving forward, like
Yeah.
we're introduced to them however many months or like years whatever,
Hmm.
that they're already together. There is an inciting incident where another team just gets destroyed and then they're in it. The
Yeah.
fact that we're able to get introduced that way and be endeared to, like, granted, yes, I have connection to these characters already, but
Yeah.
like the fact that I still think that they're able to endear these characters to people who haven't been around for hundreds of hours with the characters,
Hmm.
the fact that they're able to, it's only 12 episodes and we got one massive story arc, like
Yeah.
massive story arc with Percy. Um, but like we got full arcs for Keyleth. We got
Hmm.
at least a partial. We got like Act 1 of Pike's arc. Like
Yep.
it's unbelievable that they were able to actually like cram this much in there without overdoing it. And that's like
Yeah.
how you're able to like get that much in there without going overboard is astounding.
That's one thing that I feel like I was really conscious of was like, wow, they are really walking a knife edge of just like too much stuff in like this show with everything they're trying to pull off. And it's funny to me to say like, you know, like, oh, why didn't Laura Bailey's, you know, character have a bigger story arc? Why didn't Grog have one? Like, why is Sam Riegel's whole thing comic relief and like nothing kind of necessarily
Oh,
that much
well,
deeper than that?
depending on how long this show runs, we will 100% get his daughter
Hmm.
story, which is like
Oh yeah.
that's going to be there's going to be a moment of confrontation in the group that comes from that is going to really throw people off.
Yeah.
Because in the live table reads or table show, um, it uh, it was very off-putting. It was very like to see Scanlon get like that mad at the rest of the group, and it was like 25 minutes of the show that night where Scanlon
Wow.
Scanlon was like pissed at everybody, and so like just that's what's kind of exciting about this too for me, is like I'm excited that there's a bunch of people who will not know what is coming with this show. Like the tease that they do at the end of this, like I'm sure you said, you know, like thematically big events that happened in campaign 1, but like we're already teasing the Chroma Conclave stuff. Like this is huge.
Oh yeah.
And granted, we start the show off with a blue dragon, like it's the beginning of it, but like
Yeah.
the fact that like as soon as credits roll on this, it's just like, oh shit, it's gonna start like the Hobbit movies, how it crossed with like Smaug going like the third movie started with Smaug attacking the city. Like that is going to be how this starts, but it's 4 dragons.
Four dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting because like I one of the things that I was also aware of with like the way that they were kind of delivering a lot of narrative stuff every episode and kind of really somehow making it work and not necessarily over inundating you with those kind of with the story was, you know, I was really curious as to how accessible of a story it is going to be for people that have no connection. Like this, I think what I'm trying to say is like this show ultimately felt like it was made for fans, and in a lot of ways it was made by fans, right? Like people kickstarted this that are fans of the show, and so the fact that there wasn't a lot of kind of attention paid to setting up the context for people. I was like, I wonder how this show would land with people that have like no connection to this at all. Would they even watch this kind of thing? You know, like, or if you kind of like high fantasy or you like D&D or you know what I mean? Like there's
if you're just like a Game of Thrones fan. Yeah, if you're just a Game of Thrones fan,
like,
how do you come into this? How do you react?
And does it grab you in the right ways because of like the tonal parts that are kind of a little different? Like, you know, there is definitely a song about butt plugs that's Scanlan's series. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, right. So, like, if you are expecting super serious high fantasy, like you would get something like the Wheel of Time series that also just was on Prime, right? Like, you're gonna have a moment of you're gonna have a lot of fantasy stuff like that is going to treat the subject matter with a lot of kind of intensity and almost like too much self-seriousness.
Yeah.
But then it's going to back off into Scanlan throwing out some tasty licks, you know, in the last episode on his guitar.
The sound alikes that they've been doing in this are great because, like, obviously in campaign 1 in the Critical Role proper, he just Weird Al's it in parody songs like actual songs, and they clearly aren't able to do that here. But like, there's just enough in these songs where you can kind of like hear something coming through, which I appreciate that that's what they did instead of just having him be, you know, your average bard just singing a song that fits the universe. Like Scanlan has to do these weird things because it's Sam. So,
it's Sam, yeah. And we've all watched his commercials that he does or his ads that he does at the beginning of every episode, pretty much, and how off the wall those are. So, you know, he was also an EP on the show, so I'm sure he had a lot of say in what kind of songs he would sing.
Right.
But like, I feel like that would maybe be the thing that could throw people off who are expecting something that is pretty serious. It's like serious fantasy, even as like an animated series like this. Because that was like the tonal part. And part of me, as I was watching it, and this is like such a weird nitpicky thing, but I was like, man, if they had the kind of theme song that Campaign 2 had, where all the cast is singing it, it kind of brings you into the story. It reminds you that it's like D&D. I was like, but then I was like, all right, I can't wait to see the opening of this show, and it's like a high fantasy kind of like, you know, orchestral piece, and I was like, damn,
it's an 80s Saturday morning cartoon.
It's actually perfect.
It's like it's Dungeons and Dragons the cartoon from back then.
And I was like, oh man, you guys had an opportunity to like really clue us in. Then I'm like, don't worry, this is going to be a little silly at times, it's going to be very serious at times, but like you don't get a hint of that until you see kind of Grog being like a little comedic relief, but then like Scanlan comes in singing and talking about his wiener, and you know, it's just like, oh, okay, right, it's this show because Sam Riegel's on it. But then I keep coming back to that point of just like, if you had no equity before this and like you come into that, you're like, how does this hook you? And I wonder about that still after watching this show.
And it gets to be concerning almost, because you go like, is everybody gonna understand why they're making so many references to not being able to open doors?
Yeah, right.
And it's
Huge
like
inside jokes.
huge inside joke that is like,
Yeah.
is this only mildly funny if you don't realize that like they spent 45 minutes trying to open a door in a live show? Like
Yeah.
it's this
Maybe you
is
could answer this for me too, by the way,
yeah.
because so Pike is able to astral project at a certain point in the show, and I can't help but remember in campaign two, she was making The Last of Us part two. Ashley Johnson it was anyway, and
Well,
so she would
and
often not
Laura,
be
yeah.
present, and Laura as well
Yeah.
too. But like they'd oftentimes not be present as a result. And I was like, was that also kind of like a narrative inside joke of how Ashley was always like never necessarily at the table during
Yes.
a lot of the sessions?
Yes.
Okay.
So in campaign 2, Yasha was gone. In
A
campaign
lot.
1, Pike was
Yeah.
gone.
Right.
Ashley was on an NBC show called
Oh,
Blind Spot.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that was why that happened. In it might be campaign 2, but I think it's campaign 1. There is a time when Sam in character is saying things like using the word like blind spot a lot just to like on an episode when she came back, like when she was actually in town and able to do the show. So yes, that
What
is
a troll.
but it narratively sets up really interesting stuff for the character, like
Yeah.
because at that time it started out that they would just have Matt do like the voice for her or whatever,
Right.
but then they
See that
started
happen,
doing
too.
the call-ins where they were doing like basically how we're recording this. They would just have a
Yeah.
monitor at the table, and that's them sitting at the table.
That's so funny.
So that was yeah. She was kind of astral projecting in real life while she was doing that. So yeah,
That's what I'm saying too. It's like these kind of like inside jokes, if you had not like a lot of familiarity, like that as a concept in fantasy totally works, but like it's almost like even more satisfying as like a fan to kind of see those subtle nods to to like the actual play campaign that you could watch like
yeah,
that, where I was like I didn't even know for sure if she was always gone. Because I just remember in campaign two, I'm like, I wonder if that's like an inside joke about her kind of not necessarily always being able to be there. Oh
yeah.
God.
Because
And that,
for when they were doing The Last of Us, they were there the whole time. Like that actually never got in the way. It was always just because they were still in LA doing that.
right.
Because Naughty Dog
Right.
is like
In Santa Monica, I believe.
yeah, because they're down the street from Santa Monica Studio, right? Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they're like they filmed Blind Spot in New York, I'm pretty sure. So
Yes.
she
Yeah. It's
like
very much a New York show.
that is the only time, or if like on occasion Liam would like be away with his family or visiting his family at where he's from, like they would do the call-ins and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other stuff that's similar to that. Like those are the subtle nods, but then there's the overt nods where it's like it makes me smile, but like I wonder if it gets through the same way to other people. Like and they play it for this specific thing. They play for a general audience, I think. But like hey, I'm in love with you, right? Like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That moment is a little more drawn out in the tabletop show.
Yeah.
Like Liam and in that moment in the tabletop show is he is lifted up from basically death at that moment, or at least unconsciousness. And he says that like, hey, this is a lot, huh? I'm in love with you, right? And then that's where the episode ends. And I think, if I remember correctly, but like there's a lot more drawn out aspects of these moments that are put into the show here, which are, obviously it has to flow a little bit quicker because it is a scripted 40-ish minute show, whatever it is.
Right.
I actually did. This is one of the few times I didn't really pay attention to the runtime because they just dumped 3 episodes at a time on us.
Yeah.
So I was
just gonna play.
Yeah, I was just watching a hour and 30-minute ish movie every week. But
yeah,
there's a bunch of stuff to do with that, like with that moment with the sun tree moment of when they see the bodies hanging from it, the way that they play that is the way that it happens in the tabletop show.
Uh-huh.
It's as you're watching Matt describe that moment at the table, Marisha's the only one that notices what he's describing and that they are
Mm-hmm.
set up to look like the party. Uh,
Mm.
and so the fact that they put it on Keyleth to kind of have that moment of like it's us.
Yeah.
I don't know how well, like I'm sure that plays well.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it has that extra oomph though of knowing that it was Marisha that figured it out at the table,
Yeah, that's
because
like real deep
just
Easter
because
eggs
she's
for
like a hell of
the
a
fans.
player and she takes notes like nobody's business. Like
Mm-hmm.
she figured it out at the table, and that is one of the all-time moments for campaign 1. Is just
Yeah.
like if you have not seen this moment, like you know the moments, but I don't know what moments you've actually like seen play out.
Yeah.
You need to watch that moment, and then like you can compare and like contrast the two of like I think it takes a good moment in the animated series and like just absolutely like blows it out of the galaxy. It is having that thing to reference
Mm-hmm.
lifts up a lot of the moments in this show, and it is hard to say like how hard they hit for anybody else, but like for me they hit real hard, and I think it is because of that deeper knowledge with it. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping it goes at least similarly for, for folks that don't have that connection.
I mean, I think like it still can make a significant impact because again, like it always comes back to me that so much of this show works if you just generally like fantasy stuff. You
Yeah.
know, if you are into fantasy and not super like I don't know, like gatekeepery about what kind of fantasy you like I feel like this show will work. And my wife adores fantasy and loves like Brandon Sanderson books and a lot of other kind of contemporary like fantasy novelists. And so she kind of went into the show having played D&D once in her life as a one shot for a friend's birthday party, and
And
she
now
she still liked it.
you also have a multi-million dollar LLC.
Yes, clearly. It like the Matt Mercer effect is real. After, he's set the bar so high for what it means to be a dungeon master, where that recent campaign that I DM'd, I like it makes you want to try really hard and create the
Yeah.
kind of narrative experience for your players that feels cohesive, that, makes them feel like they're having unique arcs, that makes them feel like, unique set pieces are occurring. The fact that like I always tried to build like one kind of action set piece into every one of my sessions in the same way that this episodically does that, where every
You want it to be
episode,
an episode of a TV show. Yeah.
yeah, has like some kind of engage. It's like building up to this big action set piece, just like in the episodes of the show do. And then, everybody gets bashed and bruised, but they still come out at the end of it at the other side. And I thought like each episode, like I was like, yeah, that's what like I can't come back to like say that enough about that being my favorite part of the show. Is like this is like what like a perfect execution of what like a D&D, like this is every D&D person's dream to have like an animated series built on the campaign they've
Yeah.
made. It like really is, and it captures it so well that it like blew my mind like watching the whole series.
Yeah, and I'm I'm really looking for, like, I wonder how long it's going to take for us to actually get season 2.
Yeah, I
Because
know.
obviously the state of the world got in the way a little bit of this one.
Yeah,
Because I want to say this
yeah,
was
certainly.
early 2019 that this was
Hmm.
announced. And or at least the Kickstarter anyway, not this
Yeah.
show in this format, when it was just supposed to be one special. um but like it's so weird to think about the fact that they were like, they got it started and they were all recording in the room together at first, and then they had to split off. And like, I know most shows don't record in the room together anymore, but like
Mhm.
there is something special about the idea of this group staying together and being in the room together while they're doing it, because they have that history with each other,
Yeah.
not just themselves, but with those characters, so they can kind of
Yeah.
bounce off one another. And if they do something a little unscripted, it will still be completely in character because they've been with them for so long. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious to see what, because this was obviously like meeting the team and getting to know the team, but like this was Percy's story up front. So like
Yes.
there are teases. There are like the Chroma Conclave stuff is like the big tease moving forward, but like we also got the tease of Grog getting a very specific sword that
Mm-hmm.
kind of corrupts him a little bit in the future. But
Yeah.
like some of the best moments of the show for Grog come from that relationship with a sword. And like there is a very good outhouse moment coming up, hopefully in season 2, because of him just picking up that weapon.
Yeah.
I any time that I'm like, ah man, I'm in a bad mood, I will throw on Grog talking to this sword in the bathroom and Scanlan like keeping watch for him, like he just thinks he's using the bathroom, and just the stuff that they say back and forth to one another when Grog comes out of the outhouse is some of the funniest stuff in the entire show, in any of the campaigns.
Yeah.
This one scene is like hands down one of my favorite funny moments. So I hope we get some of that stuff, because we did get so many direct references. Like the fact that we got an entire episode devoted to Scanbo, which is just
Right.
when he does the Triceratops thing. Like that is phenomenal that they're going that.
So silly.
It's so good though. Um, but like the fact that they're going with these references, that like it is this like weird balance that they have to do where there's so much fan service in this show,
Yeah. A big way.
but
In a big
like
way.
I think because the story is compelling, it's not
Mm-hmm.
it the story is the fan service in a way,
Mm-hmm.
or vice versa, the fan service is the story. So I think
Yeah.
it is accessible despite that in media res introduction, despite the things being like
Mm-hmm.
directly pulled from the show, because they are uh adapting them in a way that is still story first, which is,
Yeah.
the best you can hope for both sides of it, I think.
Yeah, and I think for better or worse too, like the fact that they lean on a lot of archetypes for these characters because of the way that they were created for D&D. Like I think that also in turn makes it very accessible too. Like Percy's story is a revenge tale, and it's not the first one we've ever seen, and it's not necessarily the last one we're going to see either.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a pretty easy motivating factor for to kind of kickstart the story and kind of drive him forward around like why he makes the decisions he does and why he interacts with people the way he does, why he keeps people at arm's length and kind of closed off and all that kind of stuff. So like that's kind of, it's also a benefit to this story for people that might not have any familiarity with the original campaign,
Mhm.
or even like broadly speaking these people that just kind of, oh, this show looks cool on Prime, I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
And kind of throwing it on, like those narrative arcs at least have some kind of, we've seen them before, so it's really easy to kind of like just jump onto them, thankfully. But like it's certainly enriched by knowing like
Right.
campaign one a lot more deeply.
Yeah, and
And
I think that another thing that just happens to, make things a little more accessible is the fact that they have rearranged the timeline a little bit with some
mhm,
of the character stuff. Like you have Vex and Percy already getting together.
uh-huh,
That's a lot later compared to what's happening on the plot of the show. Um,
yeah,
you have the Vax and Keyleth stuff start to bubble up a little bit, even before
mhm,
the I'm in love with you stuff, like
yeah,
him calling her Kiki and stuff. Like
yeah,
having these little bits of love story allow like one sect of people watching to be able to get into it that are into romance. There's the people who want
mhm,
the big dumb action stuff of Grog, and every time he goes full rage mode, like there's that,
Yeah.
and like the fact that they're able to pull this stuff in so well is probably the biggest win that they have with this show, because like you can have your different, like, yeah, we're just telling a story that we like. You can have characters that are easily, because so many shows, so many movies are either they're either plot focused or their character. Like there's a lot of stuff where it's just like, yeah, that movie was fine, but mostly I was in it because I like the characters. That show was okay, but you know, the characters didn't really grab me. And a testament to how much they give shit about this show is the fact that they did not sacrifice one for the other. Sure, we, you know, are maybe a couple characters are just not getting their due quite yet on certain stuff. Like you said, like you wanted more of Vex, you wanted a little more Laura Bailey in there. And I think that is probably, I think we're going to get a ton of Trinket and Vex stuff next season.
Well, that's exciting, because I would be surprised if there wasn't a second season of this show.
Oh no, it's already it's long confirmed. It was confirmed.
Good.
It was confirmed when they announced that
Get
Amazon.
Excited.
Yeah, when Amazon on Critical Role proper, when they announced that this got picked up by Amazon, they announced a season 2.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's great.
But like, there's just, that's the thing that's kind of fun for me having this discussion with you. That's like, I know too much and don't want to say certain things, but like, there is a very, very emotional, in a good way, moment with Vex and Trinket. That is, it is like extremely 80s fantasy familiar stuff.
Nice.
And it's so good. And I yeah, if you're waiting for stuff with Laura, like that's gonna be it. Because like, once you actually get her connections to the characters, like her performance is going to, and she is one of the, like, everyone's a strong performer. She is, in my opinion, the best actor all around on the show. And so it's, you know, it's a shame that we don't get as much of that in season 1, but like, in season 2, I think that they'll, like, now that the focus is shifted off of Percy a little bit, we'll get a little bit more of the other characters. And then, like, it's just
that was me
knowing what
a lot
she
of
can
that
do.
too.
But knowing what she can do, especially with like the stuff that she did in campaign 2, it's, and even in campaign 3, she's already done some like heavy hitter moments. Like, I don't understand how nobody reaches out to her to be like, please be in our live action thing. It's crazy.
Like, I mean, I loved Jester in campaign 2, Jester and Fjord's kind of whole, like, love story is
everybody's
amazing.
crush, Jester.
Everybody's crushed on Jester. But then, you know, after she's an incredible actor. You know, you play Uncharted 4 and see her play this kind of bit, like, not necessarily even big bad, but the main henchman of the big bad, you know, and, you know, she does a great performance. But then you can't, like, play The Last of Us 2 and see her play Abby and be like, this person is an incredible actor. Like, they I would, like, see them in anything. I would watch them in anything. And so that was me kind of going into the show, not necessarily even like with the baggage of just like, well, she is like one of the, like, the best. Everyone on the show is incredible, you know, at what they do. So it's not fair to necessarily say that, but like, oh man, I really want to see her deliver the performance that I know she can do.
It's in the show. The weight that she and Liam particularly can bring with the drama. Like, everybody's great at what they do, but like, those two are extremely good with drama. And so they're like, you want to see a little bit more of that, because she has fun moments in season 1 of Vox Machina, but she doesn't have the thing that she is so good at. Like, that is her specialty. We don't really get that yet And
Yes.
I do think we'll see that moving forward. But yeah, like that's it's I don't even know what else there is to really say at this point. That's like it's a very fucking good show.
It's a really fucking good show. Like I
um
said, it's a time to be alive if you like genre TV because it seems like every other week there's some, fantasy show, science
especially
fiction driven
fantasy though.
show.
Like fantasy
Yeah.
is eating better than it has in like since Lord of the Rings came out in
Hmm.
theaters. Which
For sure.
there's Lord of the Rings new show coming out.
Yeah.
And I just remembered the other day, you were the person I saw Return of the King with.
Oh my God, that's right.
We
I feel like
drove
we were
after band practice over to the
Yeah,
movie
I was gonna
theater.
say.
Yeah.
I feel like we watched the two towers instead of doing band practice one day, in the basement of like
In Dan's house. Yeah.
in Dan's house. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. That makes
Because I
sense.
remember that he was always had a lot of movies downstairs, and so I remember us watching that at one point. But definitely seeing Return of the King too. That's too funny.
Yeah. That was
But yeah, like
I was doing
you're right.
I was doing the trailer reaction to the new show and I was like, "Oh right."
Oh right.
Yeah.
Well, like Wheel of Time and Shadow and Bone, and I'm sure I'm forgetting even more fantasy shows that have come
Carnival
out.
like Amazon is going hard with fantasy. Carnival
Hmm.
Row
Oh, Carnival Row. That's right.
which
Yeah.
was
Hmm.
good, not amazing,
That
but
was
it was
good.
good. It was just
Yeah.
very small, and that was where I was like, yeah, you need to spend the money that they spent on Lord of the Rings to not make it feel small, because that
Hmm.
show felt like it was like I have this problem with certain TV shows where I'm like, you were just filming there for a different scene, and you want us to believe it's a different place now. Like they just it's like the different side of the street.
Yeah.
Like I was watching Titans, and like an entire episode it's supposed to be like a bunch of different places, like, okay, I'm gonna leave now, bye, and they're literally just
Hmm.
turning the camera and you're looking at the other curb of the street.
Yeah.
So I have these like meta issues with shows like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Prime
Thanks-
is doing great though.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like naming all those shows. I think capping off The Expanse. Like I think that was an amazing. Like they did
Yeah.
an amazing job with the last 3 seasons of that show. So with being able to kind of make animated series like this and like how Invincible played out. Like now it used to be one of those things to me when Prime started releasing its own kind of content. You were kind of a little skeptical of it, as everybody was with the initial idea of anybody releasing their own content, any streaming
Yeah.
service making its own thing initially. But now they kind of like, they have kind of a degree of trust from me, where
They've
it's
hit
like,
their
oh, it's probably
stride.
going to be good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be good, even if it's not my thing. It's probably going to be well made. Like I mean, they even convinced me to watch some of Reacher. Like the airport novel.
He was on
book.
Titans.
He was on. Yeah, that's right. Was he
Yeah.
like Aquaman or something, or
Well,
on Titans?
no. He
Why do I think he was
He was
Aquaman?
Aquaman, I think, on Smallville.
Oh, maybe that was it. Yeah, that would make
He
more sense.
played Hawk in Titans.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, that's I have yet to watch that show. I kind of do want to watch that show because it looks
It's like one of those guilty
ridiculous.
pleasure kind
Yeah.
of ridiculous shows
it,
where
it,
you're just
it
gonna
looks like a CBS primetime like
nailed it.
like Nash Bridges kind of style show to me, which
I was like, this is like Sherlock Holmes with a lot of yeehaw in it, like,
Right,
because
yeah.
he has those kind of same ticks of just being able to take apart a crime scene instantly and know everything that happened, but then is also like jacked and can like fight people.
That's the thing
much
is
bigger than them.
that's the thing is they like I've never read the books that this is based on, but like there is something in the books, and this is why people were mad when Tom Cruise was cast as him in the movie.
Oh, because he's supposed to be huge.
He's supposed to be huge, but
Yeah.
also like to the degree where they actually describe his fists are the size of roast chickens. And like, it's like, and they say like the size of dinner plates. There's a lot of different descriptors for the size of his hands. It's very weird.
Yeah.
But like
Well.
the thing I hope for that show is that like the producers on that show know that it's a little ridiculous, even though the books aren't meant to be ridiculous. So like,
Oh, it is.
yeah, good. That's the only way it
it
should
is.
be. Cool. Well,
Yeah, Prime's killing it.
we've stopped talking about Vox Machina a little bit.
We're
so
just
we
talking
should-
about how Amazon
we'll-
Prime's doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll I think we'll call it there because we don't want to sidetrack too much into Reacher
Fair.
Dome.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Another episode.
yeah. We'll see. If I get to that show, we will see. I want to thank you for joining me, because it's good to have you here. It's good to we've talked through chats, but we haven't actually spoken to each other. Yeah, we haven't actually spoken to each other in a very long time. So it was good to have you here, not just to talk about this show, but yeah.
It's good to talk to you.
Yeah. So once season 2 inevitably happens, please come back and we'll go over it again. Awesome. In the meantime, where can people find you? Because you do stream on Twitch. So where can people find you for that?
I stream on Twitch Monday through Thursday nights Pacific from about 6:30 p.m. at twitch.tv/IamGhostOwl.
And I will link that in the description below on this video and in the podcast description as well, so that people can just click easily through. And other than that, thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Later. Bye.